Boom, boom. Take care, B.
Man, that music makes me want to accomplish something.
Let's get down to business.
My goodness, we're ready, everybody. We are now on Facebook Live. What on earth? What year is this?
We're finally caught up to 2008,
Holy
huh?
cow. Like 3 days ago, it looked like our show was broadcasted from 1996. And now we got a new camera. We're on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Holy cow, Ben, don't embarrass us.
And I still use a pen, though. Okay.
We'll climb that mountain one of these days,
Look,
pal.
man, just like Eminem, I write in a notebook.
Just like Eminem. It's just like Eminem, guys. Yeah. Your Ben Joravsky show for, what is today?
Today is Thursday, young man. It's Thursday all day.
Your Ben Joravsky show for Thursday, August 22nd is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky show. First up, Ben, which union is first?
Operating Engineers, Local 150.
Okay, that's one of them. The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Take a guess on another one.
But Jeff Johnson.
The Union of Jeff Johnson.
Electrical workers, man.
There you go.
Are they second? And then Chicago Federation of Labor.
Well, hold on. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I'm never doing this idea again. I'm just going to read them all after, The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126.
That's aerospace, not
Aerosmith.
Very good.
Local 126 at District 8. Big thank you to those unions for jumping on board. And the Union of Jeff Johnson. That's awesome. And today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Thursday, August 22nd, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, in these times, writer Miles Kampf-Lassen is back. Union man and pension guru Jeff Johnson is here to talk all things local politics and probably some questions about Joe Biden. And Sun-Times reporter David Roeder takes the deep dive with Benny J on downtown development. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Scaredy Cat Democrat Thursday. And here's why.
You are like Eminem. Okay, no, you're not.
I went to a rock show last night. Not a rap show, a rock show. Yes, indeed. I saw a Steely Dan cover band. Are you a fan of Steely Dan, D?
No, not at all.
Did not think you would be. Steely Dan, of course, is a great band from the 70s. Millennials, stay with me. I'm going to get around to politics. Love Steely Dan. Loved them in the 70s, loved them in the 80s, and I still love them. All right, it was a cover band. They did 2 albums by Steely Dan. Your favorite album, D, Asia. And Miles' favorite album, Countdown to Ecstasy. I know both of you love each album immensely, but we're not going to be allowed to play them, okay? I'm just going to talk about it. So after the show, after the cover band show, I went out for drinks with my wife and a friend of ours named Linda. Love Linda dearly. She's a friend of the baby boomer persuasion, all right? Who else would go see a Steely Dan cover band but baby? Although you'd be surprised, D, how many hipsters were in this audience of sort of like, millennial persuasion. I was stunned by that. They like Steely Dan too. Anyway, so going out for drinks with me, pretty soon the conversation is going to turn to politics and it's going to turn to the presidential race. And I asked Linda who she was favoring in the presidential race. And then things got a little predictable. Her voice dropped. She goes, I don't know if I want to tell you.
Oh.
I go, who could it be? She goes, don't tell. Don't tell my kids. And I knew then and there that she was going to say
what?
That she was supporting Joe Biden.
Oh, my God.
And this brings me to what I really want to talk about, folks. Democrats are so insecure about Joe Biden. Joe Biden supporters are insecure about Joe Biden. Actually, it's a delineation. I would say white Democrats are insecure about Joe Biden, and black Democrats who support him are not insecure about Joe Biden. White Democrats are so used to their kids yelling at him all the time. How can you stand Joe Biden? He's a racist. He supported all these bigots back in the past. He signed on to the crime bill of the Clintons in the 1990s, et cetera, and so forth. He's losing his mind. He could be senile. The stuff he says at any given time is insane. That's what, millennials say about Joe Biden. You know that, D. You've heard them, right? Come into the show and say that.
I thought we were talking about Trump for a minute.
Yeah, that's what they say about Joey Biden. Now, a lot of baby boomers, they like Joe Biden. They remember Joe Biden fondly as Barack Obama's running mate, the vice president, the stolid, solid white guy from Pennsylvania, Scranton, Pennsylvania. Isn't that where he's from, D? I know he's a senator from Delaware.
He's a Scranton man.
He's a Scranton man who stood by Obama when Obama needed that kind of support. Like, people were scared about Obama at first, like a little, cautious. It's a black man from Chicago named Barack Obama. And there was Joe Biden who stood by him, right? But a lot of older Democrats remember that. And they respect him. Particularly a lot of black Democrats remember that. They remember him as Obama's wingman. But he's getting bashed so much that baby boomer Democrats are afraid to say that they support Joe Biden. They whisper. It's like when they swear or something, their voice drops. You ever notice that, D, when somebody's talking?
Always.
And their voice drops. So he's supporting Joe Biden. So here's what I say to Joe Biden people. Let's practice. Say it loud. Joe Biden. If you like Joe Biden, say it loud. Don't be ashamed. Don't hide your head. Okay, he's a Democrat. He's a good Democrat. Democratic Party has changed over the years. A lot of the policies they endorsed in the 80s and 90s are policies we wouldn't endorse now. I mean, you could just go through the list, all right? But, it's an evolutionary process. A lot of the Democratic voters who are voting now have different views than they had in the 80s and 90s. You don't bash yourself, do you? You don't say, wake up in the morning and go, I don't like myself because in the 80s and the 90s, I had a horrific attitude about, let's say, the legalization of marijuana. So it's possible if you evolved as a voter that Joe Biden has evolved as a politician, all right? Why are you ashamed being for Joe Biden? I don't get it, D. I will never get it. Now, on the other hand, I said to Linda, Linda turned to me and said, well, who are you supporting for president? And I said, well, I'm like shifting every week, it seems like, but
I'm a weirdo.
I was drinking that Kamala Kool-Aid, but after the last debate, I kind of shifted over to Bernie Sanders. I'm really feeling the burn these days, particularly after I heard that Joe Rogan interview, which I keep talking about, his interview with the podcaster Joe Rogan. And I just said Bernie Sanders stands for the bread and butter Democratic values, like health care for all. So I'm feeling the burn right now, but that could change. And then she's like, I don't know. Bernie can't win. And here we go again, right back at it. So first, the baby boomers are afraid to admit they're for Joe Biden. And now they can't jump aboard the Bernie bandwagon. They can't support Bernie because they're convinced. They're just convinced that a person who speaks that loudly, who throws his hands in the air that much, and who advocates, more to the point, far left of center views cannot possibly win. And Democrats of the older persuasion are so traumatized by the Nixonian politics of their day, or the Ronald Reagan politics of their day, when Karl Rove and all the different operatives of the Republican Party who've got Democrats afraid to stand up for the values that they believe in, that many older baby boomers are convinced, absolutely convinced, that Bernie Sanders can't possibly win against Donald Trump. And that's another thing they have. Democratic voters have post-traumatic stress disorder, D, from that 2016 election. It's absolutely clear. They remind me of Cubs fans back in the O's. Every time after the 2003 Cubs season, that's the Bartman season, where the Cubs blew, what was it, 3-1? They were up in the playoffs, and they ended up losing.
Bartman.
Cub fans, get to an eighth inning, we're going to lose. You talk to a Cub fan, we're going to blow it. It's not. That's how Democratic voters are. They're just so convinced that no matter what the polls say, because they lost the last time, they're going to lose this time. Bernie can't win because he's too left, et cetera, and so forth. I'm just going to go to today's newspaper to read a quote from Donald Trump. Everybody, just to know who you're up against in this election. This is an article from the New York Times, and Donald Trump was asked a question about gun control, and he was asked about his flip-flopping on whether we should have some more oversight for on the sale of guns, and he said the following.
Are you about to do your Donald Trump impression?
I know. I am. I could give you this quote, and you could read the whole quote as Donald Trump.
You go for it.
I can't do. How do you do the Donald Trump imitation?
Let's hear it. Come on.
But how do you? What's the tip?
Oh, you you're doing like the okay sign.
Okay.
Some people think that's white power. It's okay sign.
Okay.
There you go.
But we're going to be. Can't do it, man. I should make you do it. You should read this. But anyway, I'm just going to read it straight. You tell me what the heck Donald Trump is saying in this quote. Again, the question was about gun control and why he was flip-flopping on the need for more gun control. Here we go. Quote, but we're going to be filling in some of the loopholes, as we call them, at the border, and we'll be speaking about it at the border. It would be really nice if the Democrats would indeed fix the loopholes, because it would be really nice. But despite that, I want to thank Mexico. They have 26,000 soldiers at our border, and they're really stopping people from coming in. So what happens is, with background checks, we're dealing with Democrats, we're dealing with Republicans. Folks, the question was about background checks on gun control. His answer I don't even know what his answer had to do, something about border security. Donald Trump is either a lunatic or he is in the early stages of some kind of brain breakdown, Alzheimer's, dementia, or something. That response is absolutely nonsensical. Democrats, you're worried about Bernie Sanders in the face of that? Come on, Democrats, buck up. If you need some therapy and help, go to a therapist. But don't be such worrywarts all the time, knees knocking, afraid to say who you're going to endorse, worried about Bernie Sanders possibly getting nominated. We got a country to save and an election to win. Let's get down to business, D. We got a great show today, everybody. Miles Conflass will be here from In These. I think Miles is one of those millennials who's not really feeling Joe Biden.
But loves Steely Dan.
I doubt Miles. Well, we'll ask him if he loves Steely Dan. I think I'm alone in this room right now of people who love Steely Dan.
Absolutely.
And Jeff Johnson will be here. I doubt very much if I'm going to ask Jeff Johnson if he likes Steely Dan. Jeff Johnson knows absolutely everything about pensions.
We're grilling him hard today.
Politics.
First question. You like Steely Dan?
In Chicago, we're going to go through all the options facing Lori Lightfoot as she tries to figure out how to balance a budget, pay her obligations, and make good on her promises to progressives. Man, that's a tough act for her to uphold. And finally, David Roeder will be here. Ace Sun-Times reporter Dave Roeder, good friend of the show, will be stopping in to talk about all the development. While I was gone, the development deals are popping left and right in the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago's never been booming more, huh?
So, and if anybody ever takes a tour of the Sun-Times and they notice just some guy just working like a madman with 4 computers open and papers flying everywhere, yeah, that's David Roeder.
David Roeder. And when you go by, too busy to talk, Ben. I'm on the phone, okay? I'm cutting a deal.
Yeah, on 2 phones, 4 laptops, papers flying everywhere.
Yeah, no.
Hardest working man in the building.
Roeder's the hardest working man. But by the way, Doris Davenport was in the studio yesterday. She brought her dog, Mr. Precious Love. Did you notice? I don't know if you noticed the reception that dog got.
People love Mr. Precious Love.
Yeah, it's amazing. But the only guy that didn't hug Mr. Precious Love, Dave Roeder.
Stone Cold Roeder.
He's on that phone. Oh, development deal in the West Loop.
Oh, yeah, dog, whatever. I got stuff to do.
Maureen O'Donnell, good friend of the show, loved Mr. Precious Love. She was hugging Mr. Precious Love. Maureen, get around. Stop hugging Mr. Precious Love and go out and see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's your obligation.
What a sentence.
Anyway.
I need some context.
Yes, indeed. Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. We have a lot on our agenda, but before we get to any of that young man from Alton has the news.
But we got to get down to business.
Yes, we do. Isn't that right, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
All right, yeah.
All right, everybody. My name's Dennis. How's it going? Let's do the news here. Hold on. Let me pull it up here. Okay, here we go. Middle of Thursday. Let's do local news here. And for those wondering, yes, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is still on vacation with her family in Maine. Ben, please refrain from the Maine bashing. We get it. You hate the state of Maine.
No, I don't hate the state of Maine.
Oh, boy. If I went back and played the last two shows, I think I would have a different answer.
I apologize to the state of Maine again?
You really want to do this again?
Well, I
swear to God, if this ends up you insulting Maine.
I mean, I just don't understand how you could keep electing Susan Collins as your senator. That's something I have on your mind. What was that lunatic governor you used to have? I forget his name. He's crazy. But wait, wasn't I supposed to apologize to Maine? All right, go back to Lori Lightfoot.
All right, you're horrible at this. All right, we have to talk about Lori Lightfoot and her plans after vacation.
She's coming back from Maine one of these days. You can't hide out forever.
Right? The following comes from the Illinois Political Bulldogs over at Illinois Politico and one Shia Kapos. When she returns from vacation next week, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot faces her biggest challenge yet. Negotiating a contract with the Chicago Teachers Union. Yeah. It's a delicate tightrope to walk for the new mayor who wants to be a problem solver and also draw the line for what's best for the financial health of the city. One advantage she has is a wave of popularity that could give her more negotiating power with the union's demands. Lightfoot has said she wants an agreement before school starts on September 3rd, but given how much is riding on these negotiations, that may be testing the boundaries of political reality. Unlike previous years where salaries were at the heart of discussions, the biggest sticking point for the CTU this time is increasing the number of staff, particularly when it comes to a range of other professionals who help teachers do their jobs, such as social workers, nurses, and librarians. The mayor and Chicago Public Schools have responded to that demand by committing to hire 200 additional social workers over the next 5 years. That's in addition to the 413 already employed, and that would lower the ratio of kids to social worker from 885 to 1 to about 450 to 1, according to CPS. Lightfoot and CPS CEO Janice Jackson have also proposed hiring 250 more nurses in addition to the 310 on staff. Given CPS has 515 schools, that would allow for a nurse in every school. Ben Joravsky, your thoughts on all of this here and Lightfoot's meeting coming up with the Chicago Teachers Union.
Yes, Lori Lightfoot, Stacey Davis Gates, get in a room, figure this out, cut a deal. Come on. The Chicago Public Schools has been a disgrace on this issue, D. We have so many people that come through this studio and talk about it. Troy LaRaviere, Erica Wozniak, Stacey Davis Gates. There's not enough what they call wraparound employees, people like social workers, like you said, counselors, nurses, etc. Look, the Chicago Public Schools, the greatest challenge that it faces from an educational standpoint is trying to make sure that kids from poor backgrounds do as well as kids from wealthier backgrounds. There's few systems in the state that have kids from such vastly different economic backgrounds as Chicago Public Schools. Just think about it. You have kids from the Gold Coast who go to, let's say, a Walter Payton or a Whitney Young or a Northside Prep, and then you have kids from very poor neighborhoods who are also in the system. How do you balance those needs? And all too often during the age of Rahm was sort of like laissez-faire. Let them sink or swim as they can. And he didn't invest in things like nurses and counselors and teachers' aides, etc. There was abysmal a lack of support for special ed. Lori Lightfoot has to change that. And I know it's difficult because she has to figure out where she's going to get the money. But I think there would be public support, D, for raising taxes to help the Chicago Public Schools. I think people do believe in education. The problem is we've committed so much of our property tax base to those freaking TIFs. I talk about it over and over again. Every time you expand that TIF program, you're limiting the amount of money, the amount of property you can tax to help your public schools. We pretend as though it's not like a weight around our neck, and it is. And Lori Lightfoot allowed that Lincoln Yard TIF to go down. We talk about that all the time. So I just feel as though that Lori Lightfoot is going to have to cut this deal with the Chicago Teachers Union, D, and she's really going to have to avoid a strike. I mean, there's so much tough talk rhetoric coming out now. I think that there has to be some, how do I put this, a give and take on both sides, but Lori Lightfoot has to, in my humble opinion, to make good on her promises, to hire more of these wraparound employees, and we just have to bite the bullet on the taxes. And let's get rid of the TIFs. That would be a first step to paying for our public schools.
All right, so we'll have to give you the update once Lori Lightfoot and the Chicago Teachers Union have their meeting, but for now, Who knows? All right. We're now 1 week away, by the way, from Mayor Lightfoot's budget address, where she will announce her plans to get the city of Chicago out of debt, roughly $1 billion. Give or take a little. And Ben Joravsky, it looks like we may get $11 million knocked off that tab. That's right.
Yeah,
because the city of Chicago has received an $11 million interest loan. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and the one and only Fran, the Woman Spielman. The cash-strapped city of Chicago has essentially received an $11 million interest-free loan because of its failure to abide by a law requiring checks left uncashed for 3 years to be turned over to the state. The first of the newly discovered unclaimed checks was issued on August 25th, 1987. I was like 4 years old.
I think, I was the only one. I was going to say I was the only one in this room born back then, but okay, yeah, you were around.
Ben was 50 in 1987. Means he's like 100-something right now. No, the first newly discovered unclaimed checks was issued on August 25th, 1987. That's when the city wrote a $200.77 check to the National Geographic Society. Since then, more than 22,000 city checks have gone uncashed. They were issued to companies, individuals, and nonprofits for services rendered, commodities delivered, paychecks never cashed, and overpayments made. Now, Ben, I'm going to go glass half full here for some contrast.
I don't know why.
And say $11 million is a fantastic start to getting us out of that $1 billion hole. Ben, your thoughts?
Well, except that we have to pay it. We have to pay the $11 million, so it's not really getting us out of the hole. This glass is leaking. Okay, it's not half full.
I tried.
It's leaking. There was a pretty interesting article by Fran Spielman and Clint Krisloff. But I'm going to ask Jeff Johnson about this one. A lawyer fed her this story, I think. Anyway, so he had discovered that the city of Chicago had paid these checks to people, but they didn't cash them. This is a bizarre story. For instance, they had paid a check to Commonwealth Edison. I'm looking at this story right here, D. $44,000. $44,000. What? Why wouldn't Commonwealth Edison? I know Commonwealth Edison gets a lot of money, but don't you think they would want to cash a check for $44,000? You know, Spy Magazine, just to contrast this, back in the 80s, it was an old satirical magazine. They used to do this gimmick where they would send rich people checks for 1 cent. 1 penny, including a certain president of the United States, Donald John Trump, but before he was president of the United States. This is in the 80s, D.
Let's hear that impression again.
How do you do it again?
Yeah, you're awful.
Can I do my Clinton instead?
Yeah, sure. Do your Clinton.
I love you, D.
That's a damn good Clinton.
Dennis from Alton, Illinois. Miles Davis is from Alton, Illinois. Anyway, by the way, Miles was named for Miles Davis. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah. Anyway.
Editor Miles, our intern?
Yes. Was named for Miles Davis.
Nice.
Isn't that correct? Yes. Little known fact. Anyway, all right, back to...
Not our guest, Miles Kampf-Lassen?
He may have been named for Miles Davis as well. I'll have to ask him. Where was I going with this?
Trump.
Spy Magazine. Back in the 80s, used to send checks to rich people for a penny, 1 cent, and then make fun of them when they cashed them. And one of the people who cashed the check was Donald Trump. The guy's a millionaire back in the 80s, was a big-time real estate developer in New York. Why would he need a penny? Well, 1 penny saved.
A penny saves, a penny earned.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, this is the opposite of that. Commonwealth Edison got a check for $44,000 and didn't cash it. The city of Chicago, under state law, is supposed to turn it over to the state. In fact, you know the state treasurer, D, every now and then has that big, long list of people who have checks waiting to be cashed. Have you ever found your name on that list?
Hell no.
Miles, you ever find your name on that list? It's like, oh, wow, found money. My name was on that list once. I think it was a check for like $50 that for some reason I never cashed.
Whoa.
Anyway, so there's all these uncashed checks that the city has been issuing over the years. The city has been not sending them over to the state as they're supposed to. So now, D, they're going to have to give them to the state. So, you know, it's really a leaking glass. I mean, it's not like Lori can use that to hire more nurses, all right? She's got to give that money to the state. So it's not really good. Yes, it is.
All right, guys. By the way, if you're downloading, awesome. Thank you. Keep downloading. We love your downloads. We update it and check your downloads all the time. But we do live stream the program. And boy, we have stepped up our game just in the last 2 days, people. We got a Mevo camera, very fancy. I'm not going to talk about who donated it to us. Very nice gentleman. It's a guy. But also, we did it on YouTube. Today, we're on Facebook live stream. Multiple outlets. with up-to-date technology and up-to-date cameras. People are weighing in, Ben. Good times here. All right. How about our friend Alan? He weighed in on the Facebook video live stream. He says, Ben, that Bulls hat you're wearing looks like you've owned it since Dave Corzine was on the active roster.
It's Dave Corzine, and that is somebody send him something because that's a great comment. Dave Corzine.
Man,
Dave Corzine.
People can really see you now, Ben. So they're weighing in here. Oh, we got also Johnny Joe. He weighed in. He said that close up of Ben just cracked my monitor screen.
Wait, let's ask who was the guy that made the Dave Corzine comment?
Alan.
For 10 trivia points, Alan. What high school did Dave Corzine?
He's not here. How is he going to answer it? Why are you giving people trivia points that aren't here?
Trivia
what is
question. That? It was Hersey High School, I believe, that he attended. And where did he go to college, D?
I don't know.
DePaul University. That's where. And who drafted him? First of all,
Ice Cube.
San Antonio Spurs. Man, it's basketball. I know it. But anyway, yes, this hat is about as old as Dave Corzine.
Old hat.
Old hat, old pen, old book, old guy.
All right.
Love Steely Dan.
Let's move on to some state news here. Taking a look at the Illinois governor's Thursday plans. J.B. Pritzker is at the state capitol today. What's he doing at the state capitol, you may be asking? Don't be naive, everybody. You know what he's doing. All together now. Come on, Ben. Miles, you too. Signing legislation.
Oh, I think signing a bill. There he goes.
Signing legislation. He does it a lot.
He loves it.
Signed like 3 bills yesterday. Signed one today.
Beats vetoing them like a certain other governor. You remember that governor, don't you?
I think I do.
Yay for our teachers! Yay for our teachers!
Yeah.
Today's legislation signing involves Illinois teachers and raising their minimum salary to $40,000, all in an effort to address the statewide teacher shortage. Ben, what do you think about that?
I think it's about time. The other governor vetoed it. I forget the other governor's name. What was his name again?
Yay for our teachers!
Yeah, that governor.
Yay for our teachers!
Well, listen, everybody knows I'm very pro-teacher, and I don't understand how the state thinks they could bring in the best and the brightest teachers to teach our kids. Everybody says how important it is for teachers. The children are the future, like the song says. Everybody, nothing's more important than teaching kids. And then when it comes to paying teachers to teach the kids, we're going to make you work for less. The whole charter school movement was utterly insane. It was dedicated to the proposition that you could build a great teaching force by paying teachers less. We lost our minds on that one, folks. I think we're finally coming out from that charter school delusion. But anyway, so I'm happy to see that we set this minimum standard. And, the great fight has always been over how we apportion, how we spend the taxes we give to government. And I would rather see our money go to people who do very important work like teachers and nurses and firefighters and police officers, etc., than it's see to go, let's say, subsidize a development deal in a gentrifying neighborhood that does not need a subsidy at all. So that's my take on that, D.
All right, let's do a segment here. This brand new segment. Just made it up right now. We're calling it Governor Joravsky.
Oh, my goodness.
All right.
Okay, like Mike Madigan would ever let me get on the ballot.
That's why this is fiction. Completely fiction. He would never be governor.
Oh, my goodness.
So, Governor Joravsky, if you were governor of Illinois, Mr. Governor Joravsky, how much what would the salary be for teachers?
You mean the minimum salary?
Minimum salary for teachers.
Statewide?
Statewide.
Absolutely. Bare minimum salary, $50,000. And that would cover some areas where $50,000 is like a lot more than Chicago. See, then you get into the issue, like Chicago, the cost of living is a lot more than, let's say, how much, you've lived in both cities, Alton and Chicago.
Yeah.
In your humble opinion, what's $50,000 in Chicago money in Alton?
Oh, you're living like a king in Alton on $50,000.
$50,000 then.
Holy cow!
All right, and you would be my my education guru, my salary guru. I go, D, what is $50,000 in Carbondale money?
Huh?
What was that radio station that Robert used to?
WJPF in Carterville, Illinois.
What's $50,000 in Carterville?
A lot.
Okay, $50,000. There you go. $50,000's a lot in Carterville.
my God.
That's where we go with teacher salaries.
Be high on the hog there on $50,000 a year. All right, so
and there would be still some teacher that wouldn't vote for me. There's always my beloved teachers are as well. They're as nutty as most Democrats. I kind of like Trump. Have you ever met a teacher who's for Trump? Every now and then I kind of like Trump. He's against everything.
I've never met a teacher that likes Trump.
Oh my God, I've met a couple. Anyway,
I'm thinking about voting for the Joravsky guy. But boy, that hat looks like it's like 30 years old.
Who said that? Was that John who said that?
Alan.
Oh, Alan said that. Yeah, it's an old hat. I just grabbed it. I'm going to get a new hat. I'm going to get a new Bulls hat this weekend.
Old hat, old man. Couldn't even remember Alan's name.
I maybe I should wear my White Sox hat. You know, a White Sox hat, D. Did you know that? I have a Bears hat. I never wear them. I always wear my Bears hats.
Today's show brought to you by Ben's Hats. Let's just talk about all the hats you have. What other hats you got? Fedora?
No, I've always been a baseball hat. I've been wearing baseball hats since the 70s.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Ben, we're going to need some help with you on this one here. A day after an explosive report revealed years of bullying under the reign of Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan's chief of staff, our governor, J.B. Pritzker, on Wednesday spoke out, pretty much ducked and dodged questions about whether he's still confident in the speaker's leadership. Pritzker said, quote, "The culture of sexual harassment exists in Springfield on both sides of the aisle. It has been pervasive for a long time. I think anybody that's worked in Springfield has talked about it and knows about it. And it's a very positive thing that these things have come to light." This is a story we haven't really talked about here on the show this week. We've been dealing with other issues. So, Ben, please give a little background here. What's going on and your thoughts on Pritzker's quote.
All right, we'll say this. We did a bonus feature on this subject. We didn't do that live, but that'll air Monday. So that's what they call in the radio business, a tease. Get that? A tease.
You are so good at this.
Anyway, yes, we talked a lot about the sexual harassment culture in Springfield. And, of course, this issue erupted, I want to say in 2017 time. It's just all coming together. If you can't remember the years, Elena Hampton was a former political aide to Michael Madigan, a political operative, worked with Michael Madigan's Democratic Party for years in many different races. She came forward with accusations that she supported with text that she was being harassed by one Kevin Quinn, who's another political operative for Michael Madigan and the brother of Marty Quinn. And that just brought this story to the forefront. There was other accusations of sexual harassment. Sherry Garrett made accusations about Tim Mapes, who was Michael Madigan's chief of staff. Can't believe I can still remember all these names, D. So there was an investigation into what kind of everybody in Springfield knew, which is that men were behaving badly down at Springfield. It was sort of, I always said it was sort of like a rat pack fraternity attitude. Guys were in Springfield away from their wives, away from their homes, away from their kids, and it was sort of like party time. Let's party down. And they got a little carried away, to put it mildly. And Elena Hampton, to give her a lot of credit, coming forth, sort of blew the whistle and everything. And then all of a sudden the Democrats were like, "I'm shocked that this is going on." Republicans too. Because let's face it, the behavior is on both sides of the aisle. It's only the Democrats that investigate and treat it like a serious issue, but it's on both sides of the aisle. So they conducted this report, this investigation, D, and it's very interesting. I did not get a chance to talk about this, but I still have the newspaper article. Very bizarre report. Michael Madigan, of course, is the head of the Democratic Party, and he's the Speaker of the House, and he's now the number two most powerful man in the state of Illinois. I'd say Pritzker is more powerful than Madigan. I think we all agree on that. I think Miles, who just came in the studio, would agree with me on that one too. And they did the report. I'm trying to find the report here yesterday. Oh yeah, but it's like, so the issue was in the report that they were examining, how much did Michael Madigan know about what was happening under his reign? How much was he aware of this culture of sexual harassment, of the frat boy culture, the rat pack culture, whatever you want to call it, that existed in Springfield? And the report was very delicately written, D, as to avoid seriously accusing Michael Madigan of anything except for, and this is so bizarre, as being this benevolent figure that all state employees loved, as though their biggest concern was that Michael Madigan didn't know enough about them, as opposed to him knowing too much about them, or he was too powerful or too intimidating. And I had to laugh, D, because it's like when you ask people about their bosses, they get very nervous because you say the wrong thing about your boss may retaliate and punish you, et cetera, et cetera. So what people are saying reminded me of the old days of Mayor Daley. People would only praise him and go, "I love Michael Madigan. I wish I got to see more of Michael Madigan. That seemed to be the theme. Here, I'll read to you from the report. The report states, of those interviewed, more than 100 people, including current and former speakers, staff, legislators, and other peoples involved in state politics, quote, most people did not believe that Speaker Madigan would retaliate against them. Instead, the fear was that Speaker Madigan did not know who they were and thus would not know how to defend them if they were punished or terminated. So it's just like, we love this report, D. I'm not so sure the veracity of this report. But anyway, a report had to be done. An investigation had to be done. That's how it works in Illinois. You know, you have a blue ribbon committee or you appoint some well-respected lawyer to do an investigation, and it usually clears the most powerful people, and life goes on.
So any predictions you'd like to make here as to what's going to happen with this whole Madigan situation? Madigan's going to stay in office?
Yeah. On this issue, yes. Yeah. You dig a hole, bury everything, cover up the hole. Let's move on.
All right. So there you are, everybody. Some local news happening. Feel free to check us out on Facebook at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, because we are Facebook video live streaming today. Technology is amazing, all right? It's 2019, and we're finally on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube as well. We're doing all kinds of cool things here. And, man, I feel something. It's in the air. You feel it too, Ben? Miles, do you feel that in the air?
I feel it.
You know what it is?
No.
Football.
I think, yeah, it is. Football season. It's on the way. Which means that the best sports reporters in Chicago at the Chicago Sun-Times want to offer you, yes, you, our listeners, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all of the stories you love. That's ALL, all of the stories that you love. Do not miss a game this season. Get all the big plays, scores, and stories from the Chicago Sun-Times. For a limited time only, you can test out digital access for only $1. Seriously, that's O-N-E, $1. There's no reason to not give it a shot. Stay up to date on breaking stories. Get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters. Cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city. And go deep inside City Hall with the best in-class political reporting. $1, I say, for your first month. I checked. I looked online. You cannot do better than that. So take advantage of this exclusive deal now at suntimes.com/Ben. People, do not go anywhere, especially all you on Facebook, watching us on Facebook Live. Do not go anywhere. The Ben Joravsky Show will be right back, and when we come back, In These Times writer Miles Kampf-Lassin will be joining us. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Cameron Esposito.
Everything that I have ever tried to do has had two motivations. One is I really do believe in trying to create social change, and then the other one is I'm scared and alone too, so I would like for you to join me. You know, every job that I have, I try to make sure to hold the door open. That's like my motto for like if I get through, you're coming with me, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, and especially if I have more privilege than you, like I'm holding the door open for you even wider.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th for 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident. Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed. We are back. Miles Conflassen in the studio from In These Times, a regular visitor on the show. D, you got an update for me before I bring Miles on?
An update. Nothing serious. Our good friend Sergio Mims weighed in.
Sergio?
He weighed in on the Facebook video live stream, which you can do as well. The Ben Joravsky Show on Facebook, at Benny J Show. Check it out. Get a load of that super old hat Ben's wearing. Sergio writes in. No, well, by the way, today we've been talking about the band Steely Dan, if you just joined us. Yeah. Millennials, please just hang tight with us. That's all we can ask. Sergio Mims weighs in. He says, does Ben know that the real Steely Dan is going to be performing at Ravinia?
I did know that, and I will not be going to the concert. And it's, well, unfortunately, one of the members, there's two people in Steely Dan, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, and Becker died. So it's just basically Fagen. But yes, I did know that. I do not have tickets. And Sergio Mims, if you're listening, your post on Facebook about Pete Buttigieg was hilarious. Okay? Can I just say that right now? We spent a lot of time, Miles, talking about Pete Buttigieg yesterday. We'll probably get to him in the discussion. But Pete Buttigieg came to the city of Chicago. Held a rally on the south side of Chicago at the Harold Washington Cultural Center. Let's see, today is Thursday. I believe it was Tuesday. So this is in Bronzeville, 47th and King Drive, in a black neighborhood. There was hardly any black people in the audience at all. And this is part of my, today, I'm very controversially saying nice things about Joe Biden. But before I get to that, Sergio, it was hilarious. He put on his Facebook page that he was wondering why he saw so many trains, I think the Red Line, going south into Hyde Park. And then when he saw that Pete Buttigieg was having the rally, he realized. So anyway, Sergio,
that explains it.
Yeah, that explains it. We'll get to Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden, and all the other stuff, Miles. But talk about the SEIU endorsement, big-time union endorsement, always an important endorsement for Democratic presidential candidates to receive.
Yeah, so there's been a couple updates in the past week about what organized labor is going to do in 2020. As a lot of folks probably remember, in 2016, Donald Trump was able to do better among union households than any Republican since 1984, which is very bad for the Democrats. And, Hillary Clinton actually only beat him by 8 percentage points among union households, which was the lowest percentage. And back in 2012, Mitt Romney, he did 18 points less than Obama, which is still not great. You'd expect labor to be even more with the Democrats, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that there just has not been follow through on a lot of the promises that Democrats make during the campaign season to unions and to workers in terms of passing legislation that's actually going to advocate for workers. So in the wake of that, unions are kind of like, well, we need to do something a little bit differently. At their annual Iowa convention, Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO, also said that Democrats are going to have to really compete for labor's endorsement this year. SEIU President Mary Kay Henry said that there's going to be a litmus test for Democrats this year. If you remember in 2016, pretty much every union backed Hillary Clinton, and most of them did it very early. Controversially, many of them did it without any type of formal endorsement process, without any membership input. And so as a result, people felt like the union was just in the bag for Hillary, and, they didn't really get any concessions out of her. She didn't talk about unions that much on the campaign trail. Famously, she didn't really campaign in Wisconsin or in Michigan. Places where the union movement's very important. And as a result of that, a lot of union workers, I think, felt left out and not spoken to in that election. So things are going a little bit differently this year. And as a result, we've seen Democrats come out with more bold proposals, which is what we've seen this week.
All right, let's talk. You mentioned a litmus test. What would be that test?
Well, they laid out a few things. They said that they want to see collective bargaining as part of any national programs that are put forward by candidates. They want to see $15 minimum wage. Those are things that are broadly popular right now amongst Democratic voters, amongst Democratic candidates, but what they haven't been put into writing by all of these candidates. Famously in 2016, again, Hillary Clinton had said that she was not for a $15 minimum wage. She would only agree to a $12 minimum wage. I think workers were not super happy with that, especially at a time when the wages have been stagnant since the 70s, essentially, and, workers need a raise. It seems obvious as a Democrat, you're running to be the candidate of working people, you are going to run on an ambitious program, that would benefit them. And what Clinton said was, no, we got to be pragmatic. We got to stick to just 12. And so this year, SEIU is saying, no, if you want our endorsement, you got to back $15. Joe Biden has said he would do that, but he hasn't really, come out with many proposals at all. As many people have commented, he's been, wary about putting out anything, basically, compared to it's him and Buttigieg have both been very lax on policy programs. There's a lot of rhetoric, but very few policies.
Let's go back and talk about Hillary Clinton before we get into Biden. Biden's a favorite subject of mine at the moment. But Hillary Clinton in 2016 was already moving center. Well, she was already in the center. She was moving right while she was running to win the Democratic nomination. I think that was part of just the arrogance of that campaign, that she just thought she was going to automatically win the nomination, was already getting ready to run the campaign against Republicans, where immediately they pivot and move toward the center. Both parties do that. Well, the Republicans don't really do it, but the Democrats do it all the time.
They move farther to the right.
Yes, they move farther. The big difference I see between 2020 and 2016 is that Democrats, by and large, are reluctant, at the moment anyway, to head to the center. In fact, many of the Democratic candidates who were starting in the center have left the race already. They're so unpopular. Hickenlooper left to go. Delaney, your favorite, just kidding, have left the race. So that's a big difference right there, don't you think?
I think so. And I think so. If we can back up for a second, I think it's important to look at what's going on with the lives of working people in America right now. The U.S. has among the least worker protections of any developed country in the world. It's basically on par with countries like Myanmar and Pakistan, and that has a lot to do with the lack of paid family leave, the lack of guaranteed health care, the lack of basic standards of living that other countries, especially across Europe, provide. And so the unionization rate's around 11%, which is incredibly low. It was in the 20s back in the 80s. In the private sector, it's 7%. That has not been that low since the 30s, before the union movement really was at its strongest. So, things are not going great for American workers, and certainly not for organized labor. That said, the public opinion is starting to change. Public support for unions is at a 15-year high right now, especially true among young people. We've seen strikes across the country. More than 500,000 Americans participated in a strike or a lockout last year, which is
how many highest, did you say?
Over 500,000. And what that means is that's the most since 1986. What that means, we don't even count strikes by, right now the Department of Labor doesn't even count strikes if there's less than 1,000 workers participating. Mm-hmm. So in small scale walkouts, that number could even be higher. So, and West Virginia, we saw statewide strikes of teachers last year. So that really shows a revitalization, I think, of the labor movement. And we've also seen new industries start to unionize: digital media, Silicon Valley, all these other areas where unions traditionally have not had a stronghold are starting to expand. So I think that's starting to change the tide a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know if you had an opportunity, I know you were on vacation, to see Bernie Sanders' interview with Joe Rogan. Now, folks, Joe Rogan runs a podcast, one of the most popular podcasts in America. And he's sort of a libertarian, I would say. Wouldn't you say, Dee, more of a libertarian persuasion? I think he's actually endorsed Tulsi Gabbard. I want to say that's his favorite candidate.
We're almost up to his download numbers, by the way. We're getting there.
One Joe Rogan's up here. We're down there.
We're running the grassroots campaign there. The Joravsky Show.
But Bernie was on the show, and one of my favorite moments of the interview was a really interesting interview because Rogan really let Bernie talk. And so Bernie laid out his vision. And I've been sharing some of that vision with people coming to the studio to get their reaction. So far, people not really buying Bernie's vision, but we'll see what you say. But one of the things that Rogan hit him on was when it got to the minimum wage, and Bernie said he was for the minimum wage. Rogan said to him, well, what about, not a minimum wage for teenage workers? Obviously, you're not against that, or you can't be for that, because that's their first jobs. And Bernie was insistent. No, I'm for a minimum wage of $15 for everybody. Absolutely everybody. And it was just an adamant stand that Bernie stand. That's people say, Benny, why are you drinking that Bernie Kool-Aid now? Because I like the fact that he didn't back down. And I could just see so many Democrats. Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, no. Kids aren't going to get the minimum wage. But my opinion, if you don't give them a minimum wage for everybody, then there's no minimum wage. You follow what I'm saying?
I mean, that's the key to universal programs, right? As soon as you start making exceptions or, cutting around the edges, that just starts the race to the bottom with any of these proposals, where then you get the most kind of tepid, weak, business-friendly proposals that will pass. If you'll remember, when the minimum wage, even the minimum wage increase that Rahm Emanuel passed, there were aldermen that were speaking out, including Matt O'Shea in my home community of Beverly. That was his argument too, basically, was saying, look, there's all these businesses where teenagers are working at like the Rainbow Cone on Western Avenue. We're going to have to pay them minimum wage too. They're going to go out of business. Well, Rainbow Cone's still in business, for one. There was also, just a major New York city passed a $15 minimum wage previously, and there's a new report out that shows that restaurants are doing better than ever. All of these predictions, this hand-wringing said, we're going to have to lay off all these people, we're going to have to, increase prices, nobody's going to come eat anymore. Not true. It's just the facts don't back that up.
Well, again, one of the arguments that aldermen like Matt O'Shea in the 19th Ward, aldermen whose wards border with
the suburbs
is that, well, you could just go across the street and there is no minimum wage, whatever suburb is across the street. So effectively, we're hurting Chicago businesses at a competitive disadvantage. If you raise the federal minimum wage, that is not a problem. So that eliminates that argument, although I'm sure there'd be some other argument manufactured. But what Bernie is saying in that interview, and what he is saying throughout on his stump speeches and in the debates, Miles, is that it's beyond just endorsing something like $15 an hour minimum wage. You've got to dig in and you have to fight for it. And I think this scares a lot of voters. And let's talk about this for a while. I mean, when I heard Bernie and Joe Rogan, he was like, we need a mass movement. We have to have a revolution. It can't just be a slogan. There's going to be opposition. There's entrenched interests that are going to have to give up, and they're not going to go down easy. They're going to have commercials fighting all this. Do you think that the Democratic Party is ready, that voters in this country are ready and willing to endorse somebody who is that direct about what he intends to do?
Well, I think it's important you bring up Bernie Sanders, because the other thing that just happened yesterday, in fact, was that Bernie came out with his labor plan, his long-awaited labor plan. So this, just to run through, I'm going to get to answering your question, but just to run through a few things that are in this proposal, because it is by far the most ambitious labor proposal I think ever put out by any modern Democratic candidate. It's called the Workplace Democracy Plan. And it includes some classic labor things like card check, majority sign-up, so that we'd get rid of, the need for all the union elections. It would have just cause, so that, you can't get fired for any reason. Your employer has to have a reason for firing you. It would extend union rights to all public workers. It would extend the protections to agricultural workers and domestic workers, people that have traditionally been left out of those industries. It'll also stop captive audience meetings. And I think all this stuff's very important because, of course, many of your listeners are familiar with unions and, expect the Democrats to follow through on their promises to unions. This proposal would ban right-to-work laws. It would provide the right to strike for federal workers. I mean, that's a pretty big change for him, especially when you think back to Reagan, in the PATCO strike, and he busted the unions. Bernie's saying, no, we need to give workers the right to strike because he believes in being a movement candidate. He says he wants to be the organizer in chief. And I don't think it's all rhetoric, and I do think it has a lot to do with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the great heroes of the Democratic Party. In the 30s, when FDR ran, he had put out something called the National Industrial Recovery Act. Some people might remember that. I mean, they probably weren't around then, but famously in Section 7A in that act, he said that everyone has a right to collectively bargain and has a right to organize. Mm-hmm. Now, that was just a line in a proposal, but what working people did is they said, hey, the president wants you to have a union. And they used that to activate people all across the country to demand militantly the right to unionize. And in the 30s, we saw this massive movement of working people, and that's what changed the labor laws in this country. It was not just FDR, pulling out his pen and saying, we're going to do this now. It was exactly the vision of change that Sanders is talking about, of saying we need to have tens of thousands, millions of people in the street demanding these solutions if we're actually going to put them into law.
We mentioned captive audience meetings. What are you alluding to?
Well, so if you work at Target or you work at some big box store, let's say, mm-hmm. your employer says, hey, we're going to have a meeting, and it's, mandatory meeting, and you go in and they show you a video all about how the union wants to take away all your rights. The union wants to destroy the family nature of the company that you're working in. And, they do this especially ahead of any union election. Yeah. And it scares the hell out of anybody who's thinking about that. They want to make more money, but they don't want to be fired. They don't want to be alienated from their bosses, their coworkers. They're scared. Yeah. They're intimidated. And that's what a captive audience meeting is. It means they're forcing you to take in this type of anti-union propaganda that any employer mm-hmm. is going to put forward. I mean, whether you're a big box store owner or you're just like a nonprofit manager, you don't want to have to negotiate with your employees. Most likely you want to maintain as much power as you can in the workplace. So that's why this proposal, I think it's really about changing the power dynamic and saying workers should have more power. And one of the things, just to end this proposal and why I think it's so interesting, is that it would set new standards and do that through sectoral bargaining, which is something that they have in Europe. It basically means any industry, there's going to be some basic standards around wages, around benefits, or around healthcare, around basic things. It also means that under his proposal, there would be Medicare for all as well, and any of the benefits from Medicare for all, from taking healthcare out of a contract, would go back into the employees in terms of wages and benefits. Mm-hmm. So, Joe Biden might say Medicare for all is going to screw over union workers. This proposal says, no, that's actually going to help union workers. It's going to give them more.
It was actually John Delaney who said that, not Joe Biden. It was John Delaney. Oh, no, it was Tim Ryan from Ohio's big thing.
Well, in the debates, but Biden has said that as well. That's been his argument against Medicare for all. He said that this will hurt unions.
Yeah, well, I totally disagree with him on that one.
Of course not. It would take healthcare off of the table.
Yeah, and I urge everybody, check out the interview I did with Ryan Kelly from the aerospace workers. That was about a month ago, and he just decimated that argument. He went on a riff that was really good to hear, and he decimated that argument. But in debates, it was Tim Ryan who was advocating that the strongest. All right, let's get back to the question I asked you. Do you think voters be turned off by Bernie's insistence that it's bigger than an election, it's bigger than a slogan, it has to be a mass movement, and we have to confront entrenched interests? That's what he's talking about. Yeah. He's pretty audacious about it, and he doesn't back away from it. Do you think that voters will be scared by that rhetoric?
Well, that's what primaries are for, is I think to see who is going to be able to rally the American people and what, who's the best person for the moment. And right now, with the challenges facing working people in this country, and with, a psychotic racist in the White House who seemingly every day his brain turns more into mush, as you were talking about earlier.
Guys, I think he's on the way to dementia.
Yeah, exactly. Under these circumstances, with, the threat of climate change growing every single day, with 30 million people lacking health care in this country, with as Bernie Sanders talks about, with so much wealth held in so few hands, while poverty rates are exploding, and we're seeing inequality levels we haven't seen since the Gilded Age. We need big solutions to the problems that we're facing. And when you ask most people what their number one concern is, that they're going to vote on, it's healthcare. And who do they trust the most on healthcare is Bernie Sanders. And I think it's because he speaks with moral clarity about the issues, and he says that healthcare is a right. We need it now. We don't need it in 10 years like Kamala Harris is proposing. We need it within 4 years, within the first term of any new president. And that's going to help people's lives get so much better because they'll be able to actually, have income that they can use to buy things that they want. They can live with more safety and security. I think that's true that the only way you're going to change that is by taking on the industries that are right now profiting off of people's death, basically. And that's what pharmaceutical companies, drug companies, and insurance companies are doing. So it might seem scary because it's, talking about the need for mass movements, but this happens all the time. It's not like I know a lot of people are not out on the streets every day, but when you look at the labor movement, when you look at, the women's rights movement, the civil rights movement, we've done this before and we've seen it in response to Trump. Look at all the protests at the airports after the Muslim ban. Look at, the way people have come together since the Parkland shooting and other mass shootings. We can have this type of movement politics in this country. I don't think it's too scary for Democratic voters.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit, talk about something we've talked about in the past. We haven't, and that is, of course, the Jeffrey Epstein story, which is just never ending, it seems. I'm watching from afar how that story is being weaponized to a degree by the Republicans, by Trump supporters, to try to shift as much I don't even know if it is responsibility and blame to Clintons to make this a Democratic story, which is very bizarre, very bizarre political jujitsu by Republicans. On one hand, I have to give them credit; they're out front on it. I mean, there's a direct connection between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, but they've just very successfully shifted the focus to Bill Clinton, and they're turning it into a Bill Clinton story and a Democratic story.
I think if you remember, even during the debates back in 2016, when the Access Hollywood tape came out, and all this, these lawsuits were out against Trump by women who claimed that he had sexually harassed or abused them, and obviously he was on tape talking about doing horrendous things to women. The next thing Trump did was brought in Bill Clinton's rape accusers into the debate so that Hillary Clinton had to look at them. They're very good at doing this kind of shit. So now you'll see all these hashtags that say Clinton body count and everything regarding Jeffrey Epstein. I think that's clearly thought through what they're doing there in terms of the Republican operatives. But really, the Jeffrey Epstein case is an indictment of the elite at all levels of this country. I think from both parties that were all implicated with this guy, and it's very it's clear that Bill Clinton, he said he was on the plane, he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein's. A number of Democratic donors were as well. But along with many Republicans, including Trump. So nobody's hands are clean in terms of what their involvement with this, true human villain, in our times. But the cover-up that's gone on since then is also very repulsive, and I do think that that's something that people are going to need to pay more attention to, because the fact is that there's a lot more questions that there are answers so far. And one of the things that just came out is the fact that 2 days before his death, Jeffrey Epstein signed a new will putting all of his estate, over $500 million, into a trust, which will make it, seemingly nearly impossible for any of his accusers to get any money back from him from his estate. So not only are they not going to see him face justice now, they're also not even going to be able to get any money, or at least it'll be very, very difficult to do so. And as a result of this, while, the William Barr might say we're going to keep the charges going, the charges really died with Epstein. Nobody else was charged. There were no other co-conspirators. So there's no other, case really going on right now other than them looking through and, releasing some files here and there. But they were about to release a list of co-conspirators that could have really brought a lot of people down, or at least, brought their names out into the open.
Yeah, I'm always resistant to conspiracy theories. It's really difficult for me. I don't like to openly articulate them. But I'm looking at Jeff Johnson. I say this, but this particular one, I'm struggling with this one, and part of it is just like a realistic thing, because he was supposed to be under suicide watch, and they're so underserved at the detention center in New York. And this gets into a larger issue about firing federal employees and really going after federal unions, which the Trump administration has been waging a fight against federal unions since they walked in office. So there's a lot of other issues that are very important that are all around this.
It's true, but I mean, when I say cover up, I don't just mean the conspiracy. I mean, there was subpoenas sent out for 20 people in the jail that were working in the jail today. We also saw the warden was put on leave. These guards were fired. It's not as if, even if you believe the complete official story that was put out there, that, Epstein committed suicide, that he hung himself with these paper thin bed sheets, there's no doubt that these guards were not doing their job and they were fired as a result. And, the head, this is a Federal Bureau of Prisons. This is run through the federal government. William Barr is the head. He's the Attorney General. His father was the person who started Jeffrey Epstein's career. He was the guy that brought Jeffrey Epstein out of Dalton, the school in Manhattan, and helped turn him into a hedge fund billionaire along with Les Wexner. So the connections there are very close. Even if you're not looking, even if you don't believe that there was underhanded stuff going on there was no doubt a cover-up. That's why it's being investigated out in the open right now. So you don't have to, I don't think, even be a conspiracy nut to think that there's something very fishy going on, and it implicates a lot of very powerful people, and that is probably why we're not getting real answers.
All right, Miles Kampf-Lassin from In These Times is my guest. Before I let you go, Miles, any stories you're working on you want to tell people about, if they want to get in touch with you, all that good stuff?
Well, for one, you asked me before during the break whether I'm a Steely Dan fan. Definitely am. I'm on board. Reelin' in the Years, one of my favorites.
There you go.
Ricky, Don't Lose That Number. What's that? These Are the Days, The Expanding Man.
Yes.
What is that? Deacon Blues.
Deacon Blues. I love that song.
I'm on board with you there.
Also, millennial for Steely Dan. I like that.
Also, please, check out In These Times stories at inthesetimes.com. We have a big story out today on Joe Biden. We didn't get very deep into the details on, but his history of bipartisanship and how it's had disastrous consequences for progressive policies. That's on the homepage today. We also have a piece on the Sanders labor plan by Sean Richman. You can also go back and read an interview I did with Bernie Sanders last year that talks a lot. He talks a lot about his views on the labor movement. And you can follow me at Miles K. Lassin on Twitter.
All right. We're going to bring back the Joe Biden discussion for the next time you're on, because I was defending Joe Biden. And part of it, I'll just leave you with this. I mentioned this earlier before you came. I was out with, the reason we were talking about Steely Dan, I was with a friend at the Steely Dan concert, and afterwards, I asked her who she's supporting, and her voice literally dropped. And she said, Joe Biden. And I'm like, why are you embarrassed? Scream it from the mountaintops, man.
Does that sound like the kind of guy you want as your nominee to run against Donald Trump, as somebody people can't even bring themselves to advocate for?
Well,
that seems like a problem.
Yeah, I get your point there, but I think Democrats spend so much time in infighting, and Democrats intimidate other Democrats, and I'll just leave it at this. I noticed when Black Joe Biden supporters come into the studio, they're not afraid to say they're for Joe Biden, but I noticed a lot of white Joe Biden supporters like, Joe Biden. Hey man, if you're for Joe Biden, say it loud. All right,
I think so too, and explain why.
And explain why. There you go. That's a good. And that's a perfect transition for the next time in the show. We'll take a deep dive. I'm going to read the story. I haven't had a chance to read the story. I'll read the story. Miles Kampf-Lassin is his name. He's a regular guest on our show. Thank you so much, Miles.
Thank you, Ben.
Jeff Johnson, the immortal Jeff Johnson, is sitting on deck. We're going to bring him on. I'm going to grill him on pensions. He's like sweating already. He's waiting for those pension questions. We'll have Jeff Johnson on. We'll also talk about Lori's budget and all the decisions she has ahead of her. We'll be right back.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Hey everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
You know, not everybody thought that I should come on this show.
And we appreciate it.
All right. Your network does not necessarily have a great deal of respect in my world.
Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Hannibal Buress.
The real reason I came home is just because I was traveling a lot anyway. I wasn't in New York that much, and I don't have a full-time job in New York. I work a lot, but I'm not in New York, so it was just like I don't need to be here anymore. And also I just wanted to work on different stuff here in Chicago. So I have this center that I'm working on the west side, Melvina Masterminds. It's going to be arts and then a tech program and after school programming for kids in the North Austin area. So just wanted to be back.
There we go.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th. All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Thursday, August 22nd is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show starts right now. It is Thursday, August 22nd, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studios on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, union man and pension guru Jeff Johnson is here to talk all things local politics, and Sun-Times reporter, a.k.a. the hardest working man in this building, Dave Roeder, returns. And now your host, maybe like the 7th hardest working person in the building. I'm being generous. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Jeff Johnson's in the studio. Get ready to talk budgets and pensions and local politics. But before we do that, you got an update for us, D?
Absolutely. We do have updates, quite a few. And all of these updates involve the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page.
Oh,
that's pretty cool, right? Which, by the way, we're now live streaming on Facebook. How cool is that? Ben's already got made fun of for his hat. Someone said their monitor broke when they saw Ben's face. You're liking this.
1993 Bulls.
Yeah, it's an old school hat.
Very old school hat. Very old school. All right, I'm looking here to find my update. Okay, our update here, like I said, it involves the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. If you're already watching on YouTube or if you're listening on the download, by the way, please keep doing so. But go check it out, the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook live stream. Weigh in, give us a message or something. I don't know. At Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. Our first update is a poll question posted on our Facebook page. Big news for teachers. Governor J.B. Pritzker is signing legislation that raises the minimum salary to $40,000 for teachers in Illinois by the year 2023. Hashtag Governor Joravsky would raise it even higher to $50,000. In Chicago dollars, what would you, the listener, make the minimum teacher salary in Illinois? Your options are more than $40,000 or less than $40,000. Very easy. Head over and leave us your answer, comments, thoughts, or anything else you'd like to add to this poll question. Elda weighed in with her thoughts. Elda says, I'm the secretary and I make twice that, starting $70,000 with a beginning 5-year contract, which goes toward tenure when completed student loans are paid off.
Yeah. Wow. I suppose she didn't say if she lives in Chicago.
No, that's all she put there. But be like Elda and weigh in as well. Anything else you'd like to say there?
Well, I would like to say this, and I'll bring Jeff into this conversation. When we were talking about Pritzker signing that bill that raised minimum wage, if you will, for teachers of 40 grand.
Teachers,
and I think Ronner vetoed that bill about a year ago. And this shows you the difference our governors make. And I was pointing out, well, $40,000, I said 50. That's what I think the minimum should be for teachers. And when you think about it, this is my argument for it, Jeff. It's a professional career. You have to go to college, so you have student loans, you have student debt, and it's also supposed to be a profession that's solidly middle class. It's supposed to be a profession that people can think about keeping for 10, 20 years. It's not supposed to be a platform. It shouldn't be a platform. Well, I'm going to be a teacher for a couple of years, then I'm going to go to law school, and my real life will begin. But in any profession, the longer you do it, the better you get. So you want to encourage people to stay. So you start nickel-diming your teachers, you're not going to encourage people to take the career.
Exactly, and you look at their college education requirements just to start with, and then you start comparing that to other jobs where you need a 4-year degree or a master's or anything like that, and you look at the pay there. Throw in the fact their responsibility, because at the end of the day, everybody always forgets that they are teaching our future. And from kindergarten till basically college, and even through college, you can go in the professor adjunct issue, but you can, they have their hooks into our future. And if you're gonna pay them less, you're gonna get you get what you pay for, and you're gonna have these, for lack of a better word, not the best, because they can't get a job anywhere else, so they're gonna teach. And it's an investment in your future. It's an investment in your country. It's a state, city, whatever it is. And I just always felt that, you need to pay them what they deserve. And it's an investment that will come back tenfold if we have good teachers throughout the state.
Yeah. So if it was Governor Johnson, what would you sign the minimum wage to be?
I would have to go above 40. Right. I mean, cost of living, because you got to factor everything in, right? So we're just going to use one state blanket. The Cook County area, some of the northwest suburbs, $40,000. You're living in a cardboard box in Barrington. And if you go down to Peru, and I always pick on Peru for whatever reason. You go down to Peru or whatever.
Poor Peru. Yeah.
$40,000. It's a middle class life, right? So $40,000, even in like the outskirts of Illinois, you're still not rich, but $40,000 in some parts of the state is a good start. It's a starter income,
Well, that's what we were talking about with Dennis. He's from downstate. And so I was saying, D, what is 50 grand downstate? I know what $50,000 gets you into the city of Chicago.
Yeah, 1 bedroom.
Dude, we're balling if we 50,000 a year downstate. Holy cow!
Lighting cigars with 20s.
Oh my goodness! Burger King for everybody.
But I do not believe it's a detriment to have some of your more successful citizens in a community to be your teachers.
Be the public service workers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're respected. It's an honorary position. People look at you with, treat you with the respect.
And can you think where'd you come from?
Alton.
Illinois. Can you think of Alton? We recruited Ben from Chicago, paying him $50,000 a year. He's the best of the best. He left Chicago to come to Alton and teach our children. The parents would be like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
We recruited them from another city to come here.
Yeah. So I think we're in agreement. Make it $50,000. All right, Pritzker.
I was gonna say we got one more update here, and I got to know Jeff Johnson's opinion on this.
No comment.
Shout out! Oh, okay.
Already.
Shout out to our Facebook friend Joan, and no, not that Joan Ben. It's our Ben Joravsky Show Facebook friend Joan.
Okay, all
right.
I didn't think it was the other Joan.
Along with a very nice message recommending our show to people, Joan asked. So now we're supposed to like Joe Walsh? Please discuss. Now, if you weren't aware, Joan asked that because it was in the news today. Shout out to the Illinois political bulldogs over at Illinois Politico and One Chia Capos. Joe Walsh, the conservative radio show host and former Illinois congressman, is moving toward challenging President Donald Trump in a Republican primary, calling the president a, quote, unfit divider-in-chief and claiming that the party is craving an alternative. Walsh told Politico on Wednesday that he was confident he could secure resources and support to mount a challenge against the president, and that if he ran, he would announce in short order. While Walsh on Wednesday would not yet confirm he would enter the primary, two sources who spoke to him said he was privately confirming he would announce his presidential bid this weekend. And we got a quote from Walsh here. He says, if I'm to do it, it's going to happen soon.
All right, and this is Joe Walsh, former congressman, talk show host, as opposed to Joel Walsh, the guitarist for the Eagles and Hotel California, one of Jeff Johnson's favorite songs. He will refrain from doing the
I was
air guitar.
just trying to think of the riff.
That's a different Joe Walsh. That's an old joke I always use. In terms of Joan's question, are we supposed to like Joe Walsh now? I'm going to speak for myself, and then Jeff will speak for himself. I cannot imagine in any universe me liking Joe Walsh's policies. I reserve the right to say I like or dislike a human being only when I've met him, and I've never met Joe Walsh. But in terms of his policies, I dislike them immensely. I oppose them. However, I like the fact that somebody in the Republican Party is considering running against Donald Trump. Remember, William Weld was also talking about running against Donald Trump, the former governor of Massachusetts. I believe that Republicans have to look at themselves in the mirror, and I agree with Walsh. If he's the one who said that he's the divider in chief, he's like ripping apart this country in so many ways, just going right at our wounds, just like digging the knife into them, Jeff Johnson, all for his own political ends. We talked about the games he was playing yesterday, trying to divide Jews from the Democratic Party. We talked in the past about he's trying to divide blacks from the Democratic Party. And I just feel as though he is willing to sacrifice so much just for his own reelection. So I would welcome any Republican who runs against him in a Republican primary. It doesn't mean I'm going to vote for that person against a Democrat. Obviously, I would not, because I've never voted for a Republican in my life, but I would welcome a Joe Walsh in the race against Donald Trump. Your thoughts?
Okay. From a strategic standpoint, I think it's good if you're the opposing side and then you have infighting, right? If you're a hardcore Democrat and you want them the Republicans to kind of fight it out. He spends money. Joe Walsh gets to rip open some wounds, attack his weaknesses, and from the other side of the aisle, you get to see where the weaknesses are, what polls better, what gets people out, right? Do I think he has a chance? No, not at all. But from a strategy standpoint, I think it's good, just to get out there and see what holes you can poke at, and then you follow that up. From the other side, to be honest though, I do like when parties fight it out themselves. When you have candidates in the party that, hey, the best, like you were talking in the last segment about, hey, that's what, if Bernie's the good candidate, or Biden's a good candidate, it'll come out. It'll who can get the voters out there, and you find that out when you're fought in your own party. So I mean, I don't know. And I'll be honest, I don't put much stock in it. I read the article and I kind of poked around on, looking online. I don't put much stock. He's kind of getting his name out there. His name gets floated up there for a while, and he could maybe parlay that into something else.
So he's using it to promote something.
Promote something else. Yeah, that's where I see that going.
Yeah, you may be right. I think that skepticism is probably warranted, but I would welcome, again, like just everything you said, I would welcome Republican challengers to Donald Trump and their Republican Party. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It would only help the Democrats, at least force Trump to spend some of his money.
And some of the wounds.
All right, let's talk about, we were talking earlier about how we would each raise the minimum wage statewide for teachers, and that would, of course, cost money. And that leads me to talk to you about Lori Lightfoot's budget speech. It'll be coming next week. I presume you'll be in the audience watching.
Quite possibly.
Quite possibly. I'll guarantee you'll be in the audience watching, and then you'll be reporting back to us on your thoughts. So what do you see ahead for Lori Lightfoot in the upcoming budget season?
While the number that's floated out there, $1 billion, I think that's a little high.
In terms of a deficit.
Yeah, the $1 billion deficit. I've gotten some phone calls recently, people poking around on like what possible, because, and I was telling this person yesterday, the third rail now of Chicago politics is property taxes. And if it's a last resort, it's the last option in the bucket. But you don't want to go there. I mean, that seems like a third rail right now. So you look at some of the other options, and you start hitting the service tax. I think that's an easier lift. And, some people could say that it was a rookie move in where when it was leaked out there about how sale or the service tax or property was a transaction tax or whatever, that because the Cullerton spokesman goes, wait, what? What'd you say? But if you look at our past mayor or mayor previous, there was some Machiavellian ways of how they dealt with where you floated something out there, let it get kicked around for a little bit. And then when it comes back, you know what the negatives are, you know what the positives are, and you tweak what you need to in your advertising for it. I think that you'll see the service tax kind of catch hold, and she can hit the people of her law firm, and there's no better selling point than I'm whacking my former employer, and they're good with it. If you can get them to agree to that, right?
That's a big F.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's ways out there. You get the casino coming online soon enough, and I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
The state's in a surplus right now. And, just keep in mind, we're talking about the best possible conditions right now. 11 years into a bull market. The economy's going along good. There's some volatility in the market nowadays. But we're at the best possible time now for just market conditions. And there's going to be some tough decisions. You talk about every budget for, I think, since Old Man Daily probably, it was the same script that they would use. It was always, we're going to tighten down on city services. We're going to cut spending. Mm-hmm. And then they hold up how they cut spending to the public. And then they go, okay, we're going to tax you over here now. And so it's kind of, I think, it'll be interesting to see how that gets played out now.
Well, the other part of the script, I'll get into the games that she's playing, because I think she's pretty shrewd the way she's playing this. Let's just start with the being on vacation when the stuff is leaked, so she's not around to answer. We've been joking about this. She's been in Maine for forever, and no phone call. Apparently they don't call. They don't have a telephone.
No cell phone service in Maine.
This phone doesn't work here. So these things get floated. These trial balloons get floated. She's not around to take the punches.
Exactly.
And then when she comes back from Maine, from the distant universe of Maine, she can weigh in, and she will have had. This is what you were getting at. Essentially, she'll see the flaws, and
she'll see the temperature of the room. Yeah.
But the other thing that she did is straight out of the Rahm playbook and straight out of the Daily playbook, and that is to maximize the deficit So that when you first come in, so you can blame everything on this mayor. You can't believe that's what that speech is going to.
Yep.
Unbelievable deficit he left me with.
I mean, there was a thing that was always floated out there between Daley and Rahm about how Rahm would never blame Daley publicly. But if I'm the previous administration, hey, me and you are talking, you're coming in, I'm coming out. Hey, listen, blame me for whatever you want. Yeah. Go ahead. You just use me in any way, shape, or form.
I know.
I'm going to be over here. So no, that's exactly. The last guy did it. Yeah. And me and you have talked. The last administration did make efforts to try and get out of under the last 22-year administration.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how dedicated you are. And I think the issue goes to, part of another phone call I had yesterday was from an out-of-stater, finance guy. And he pretty much hit the nail on the head about city finances. He goes, there's a issue, and he asked me, he goes, is there an issue of tax fatigue in Chicago?
What does he mean by that?
That taxes have gone up for 6 straight years or 7 straight years. Mm-hmm. Property taxes have gotten maxed out for 5 straight years.
Yeah.
Everything almost under the sun has gone up tax-wise. Mm-hmm. And you have residents that feel that they're overtaxed.
Yeah.
And there you go. Yeah, exactly. You have residents that feel that they're overtaxed.
Yeah.
So how do you sell you could say $1 billion budget or $1 billion deficit up to or down to $400 million? Mm-hmm. How do you sell that to the taxpayers, the citizens of Chicago who feel they're overtaxed?
No, in other ways. So what do you mean by $1 billion to $400 million? In other words,
$1 billion is the set amount. The deficit of we're $1 billion short. We need to make that whole,
fill that hole.
Mm-hmm. Down to, depending upon what numbers you use, 450 million being realistic.
Got it. Okay.
And 200 of that you can kind of shell game it, scoop and toss loans, stuff like that, and you end up with a realistic goal of possibly 289, 300, 350. Yeah.
And so what's your thought, the service tax that you were alluding to, which is the one that they've sort of been suggesting, the trial balloon they let out, that would be on high-end services.
High-end services,
like top legal. Now,
legal, investment consultants, auditors,
I can't see people in the city of Chicago, just ordinary voters, being concerned if the downtown law firms suddenly have to charge a tax on their clients. Do you see that as an issue that would turn people?
From a voter standpoint, no. But these are influential people that are going to be the ones that do have a line into the mayor's office. But it goes to that can be a shared sacrifice. We're all about shared sacrifice. Everybody has to give a little, so nobody gives a lot. And if it's sold to them in the fact of it's going to be shared sacrifice, you just give up a little. And, I think that's a way to do it where it's not, you have to sell it to the public first, mm-hmm. which for the most of them, it doesn't affect a lot of the public for the city of Chicago. I think that then you have a better chance of that not being the controversial tax that you're going to have to raise.
Do you suspect there'll be an argument out there? Do you foresee an argument by, let's say you're slapping a tax on high-end legal service, suddenly law firms talking about, well, we're going to move to Gary.
I can move, and so I will openly pick on Indiana, so I don't care. And I'm like, all right, you're going to move to Indiana? Really? Okay. All right, you're going to move from downtown Chicago on the riverfront to Indiana? Good luck.
Yeah.
Let me know how your employees liked it.
All right.
I openly pick on Indiana.
Yeah, I pick on Indiana all the time, too. But I just remember when there was the LaSalle Street tax.
Yeah, we can move.
We're going to go to Indy. We're going to go to Gary. I'm like, you can go to Gary.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I got a feeling she's going to go in that direction. That's my prediction. Too, That's what it was all about. And I do not see a significant property tax hike other than for the schools. I think there will be a property tax hike for the schools. All right, let's talk about casinos. It's been a while since you were last on the show.
Yeah.
Another trial balloon of sort. A report was issued. I don't know if you were in town for this one.
Mm-hmm.
That said, but it might not be profitable for casinos to go. Already they passed the law, Jeff, and they're already saying, "Oh, it's not going to be profitable to have a casino."
I will backtrack to say that last time I was on here, you were pretty good. He was. I'll give him credit. I give credit where credit's due. He goes, Jeff, that the casino where it's going to end up is not on that list.
Yes, I did say that.
Yeah. He goes, it's not on the list.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay. And I've quoted you to numerous people. Like I had a wise individual once told me.
That's right.
Yeah,
I did say
it's not
that.
on the list. And I went, yeah, he's probably now. I go, he's right.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, because the way that report was worded was for the 5 trial balloons, none of them would be good. You know, the Mercy or Michael Reese site would be the best, but there's other better ones out there. And I don't buy the argument that we don't want it too close to conventions.
Oh, that is the biggest bogus argument.
Because, you go to Las Vegas Casino.
Come on.
You have to walk through the casino to get to the convention center. Really?
I know. I never bought that from the get-go.
Yeah, whoever was, we're worried about the convention industry. Okay, all right, buddy. So I do, I still, my money, my dark horse is McCormick Place, the East Building. In the old building. It's already pre-wired for a lot of the electricity and everything like that. Somebody floated in my ear recently about end of Navy Pier, because you can renovate that auditorium that basically they only use right now for fire and police graduations at the very end of it. But that seems a little more heavy lift because you're including.
Is that big enough?
See, that's what I mean. You have to renovate it a lot, and you're bringing in McPier. It's not going to. I think you are 100% correct when you said that a month or two ago that it's not going to be in one of the 5 sites that they listed.
That was that little scam. It's because the reason I said that is that all the articles in this like small print said, oh, by the way, it doesn't have to go to one of these sites. I'm like, well, why are we even investigating?
Why are we looking at it? And the other thing I found extremely, I'll say funny, is there was a mayoral candidate running for election last time, and he floated out the idea of casinos in the airports.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Gary McCarthy.
Oh, Big Mac.
Yeah. Casinos in the airports. And people were like, sit down, you knucklehead. What? Yeah, whatever. And now if you look at the report, well, they could generate $45 million a year. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
Gary McCarthy's like, guys, I said this during the election.
Well, I mean, and also, it's not just Chicagoans. It's everybody who's just wandering through O'Hare with time to kill.
20 minutes. Okay, ka-ching.
Well, I have mixed feelings about casinos in general, and it's like hits the people who can least afford to pay the hardest, and they're generally the suckers who are lined up, looking for. What a miracle! Because Jeff, you know as well as I do, it's stacked against you.
Oh God, yeah. I've kept many electricity bills paid for at casinos in my time.
Yeah, and then I say this as a reformed gambler. I just like stay away from them completely. But I would think that it's pretty obvious it's going to go downtown if it comes here at all, and they're looking already to adjust the payout.
Yeah, I mean the way they split it, a third. I mean that just, I know.
And, well, what's the point of having it if we minimize our take?
Well, what I think, it came down to, like, the large sticking point was always the city license. The city wanted to own it.
Yes.
And downstate was, and let's say just south of I-80, the Republicans were like, we're not giving Chicago Casino, given their history. And that was always, I think, the sticking point. And finally, when the city said, whatever, we don't have to own it. Yeah, sure. But they only get a third of the profit, and we get a third, state gets a third, and now that becomes like, well, it's not profitable now.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to go back and tweak that aspect. What do you tweak it that makes it profitable for somebody to run it, and profitable for the city and per se states to make sure that everybody's getting a fair enough cut?
Yeah.
That's going to be a mess. That's a bowl of spaghetti to unwind.
That is, and there's every lobbyist in the world is going to be in that room when that thing is cut, that deal is cut. And as you pointed out, and now I've noticed this, but these papers must be listening to our show, because you pointed out that that money from Chicago will be dedicated
police and fire pensions. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk one more time. Give folks a little background on pensions. How much is that obligation right now that we have in this heading into this budget cycle?
Heading into this current budget season, that just for police and fire, because as a backdrop, MUNI, the Municipal Pension Fund, which I am a grateful trustee on, our increase is in the sewer and water tax. So that's already preset. It's going up. It's going to be on the sewer part of your.
I just
sewer
paid my bill.
Hey, well, hey, God bless you.
I just paid that.
God bless you.
Yeah.
The 911 tax is going up. That frees money for the laborers fund. So that's already predetermined. It's police and fire pension funds that have a $289 million jump this year. So out of that, the reported billion, 289 of that is for police and fire pension funds. So for 5 straight years, property taxes went up. It was the ramp, like the predetermined numbers that for muni and laborers have. And so then it went up for 5 years, and at their end of the ramp, and now they were on a predetermined number, and then now they're going to jump what is referred to as actuarial determined contribution. So an actuary who's sitting over where he's at says, ka-ching, 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 you have to pay this number is what the city owes, and it's an independent person, $289 million jump. That's a large jump. And so the city, there's the soft debt, hard debt, as far as how you want to figure out, like, okay, we have a deficit, but what do I need to pay? Do I need to pay the electric bill, or do I need to pay, the TV bill, right? What's hard, what's soft? $289 million for police and fire.
And that would come out of the casino.
Yes. From the bill years ago, SB 777,
Yes.
which I screenshot you and sent you as proof.
Because I didn't believe him.
Yeah, he didn't believe me. Yeah, exactly. And I think the exact wording was profits from a Chicago casino will go towards, and it's in both bills, police pension fund, fire pension fund.
So really, when they get into that back room, and they start wheeling and dealing on the formula. And when I say the they, I'm talking about the governor, the mayor, representatives of them, if not literally the governor and the mayor, lobbyists, et cetera, and so forth, for the gambling interest. They're going to try to figure out a formula that will, from a casino, that'll guarantee that the operator of the casino makes enough money to make it worth his or her while to run the casino, and that the city of Chicago and the state get enough proceeds from the casino to make it worth their while to set up the casino. What do you think? The state's going to have to give a little bit on that one?
Well, I mean, any new revenue to the state is extra revenue, right? And we had talked before, there's no such thing in the last how many years? There's never been a thing as new revenue. And so you're seeing new revenue introduced, and it's marijuana, it's gaming, it's all these other, these different aspects are popping up now. And if I'm a politician, if I'm an elected official, I feel kind of sad because all this new revenue is going to pay old bills.
Yeah.
And so the state's going to have new revenue, but then it does in turn free up money towards the city because there's money that flows from the state to the city. And there's ways there that if it's extra money to the state, you can just free it up towards the city.
Yeah.
So, and one of the other things to be cognizant of, I should say, is that the required contributions, when they do these contributions, they look at it either 40-year terms or 50-year terms. So we'll just use 40 years. And in 2030, the pensions will be 90% funded in 2030. And so they dedicate it like from here to there, straight line, how does it get there? Well, if you extend the time where, instead of 40 years, let's use 50. Now those payments go from this, like straight up, or not straight up, but on a higher angle, they go a little spread out. And that's where I'm an ardent supporter of, paying more money to the pension funds. And, there's ways there where, you might not be paying the full amount.
Yeah.
And this is where you get into kicking the can. Well, they will get their teeth kicked in if they do this from the rating agencies.
They being who?
The city of Chicago, Moody's, Fitch, S&P, because we're gonna dedicate money from here to 30 years. Well, how about we do it in 50 years instead? But if you're still increasing money to the pension funds, I see that as an overall net positive, but it's not exactly the best scenario.
All right, and let's get into something. I'm going to put you in the hot seat here. I know.
I haven't been in the hot seat?
Yeah, I've been talking. By the way, Dave Roeder, folks watching, that is the great Dave Roeder. We're going to be shifting conversation. We take a break, talk about downtown development.
Just walked in and he's already judging me.
Yeah, and he's like already, because we were on the camera there, Dave. So you're on Facebook Live and YouTube. Anyway, all right. But I've been talking a lot about this. Dorothy Brown, clerk of the circuit court, announced she was not going to run, and she had came right out and said, I'm vested in my pension, and that's why I'm leaving office now.
Okay.
And I've been critical of her for saying that, and I would love to get your response to this, because I believe I'm a big supporter of pensions for cops and firefighters, city workers and teachers, et cetera, and so forth. I believe they do a very important service. Public officials, elected officials, I'm a little less certain that that the service they provide is as important as like a police officer or a first responder, a person in an ambulance. Okay. And when somebody just boldly asserts, well, I'm cashing in now. I just think that undercuts the credibility of the whole pension movement, and it makes it that much more difficult for like legitimate pensioners to get their money. What do you think?
So we'll start with Tier 2 in 2011 for the city of Chicago when they did we've talked about how they changed the tiers for the new hire ones. They did away with the aldermanic plan for City of Chicago aldermen in 2011. So now if you're a newly elected alderman after 2011, you're in the same pension kind of formula as any other city worker. So it's not like they get the aldermanic advanced plan where they can retire after 20 and stuff like this. So they're like any regular city worker. And, for a lack of a better word, you got hired at 20, you have to work till you're 67. So they've kind of made some steps to change that recently. To your point, as far as just elected officials overall, I think that if they did their job, got elected, earned their pension, I'm not going to begrudge anybody for playing, like when you get hired, because that's my thing. When you get hired, what are the rules to the game when you got hired?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
What are the rules? You got it.
And so her flaunting that I got mine and I'm out,
it
just takes away from the fact that she thinks if she doesn't run, the feds are going to leave her alone, like a lot of other elected officials. And, we'll see how that plays out. But it's, take the bullseye off my back. I'm out of the game, right?
All right, I threw the hard question at him, and he didn't duck or dodge. Jeff Johnson, that's why I love him so much. Dave Roeder is sitting on deck. We're going to bring him on. We're going to shift gears, talk about downtown development. We're right back.
How many, Craig?
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. Chicagoland Cremation Options.com. One more time. Chicagoland.cremationoptions.com.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago, and people, it is amazing. Furniture, appliances, books, antiques, candles. I'm looking at the website right now. All of these books. Holy Lord, Ben would love this place. He loves reading. Oh, is that an entertainment center I see on greenelementresale.com? It is. Green Element Resale. It's a fantastic place. And they are sponsors of the Ben Joravsky Show. So if you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, stop into Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway in Chicago, and tell them thank you. They're open Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. Sunday, 12 until 7 p.m. Green Element Resale. Head on by. Who knows? You may see Ben Joravsky there shopping for candles. Oh, wow. He loves candles, everybody. Cinnamon. Oh, no, he likes the marijuana scented candles. Yeah, you usually light a candle to get rid of the smell of marijuana. Ben likes the smell of marijuana. He uses the candles. It's very interesting. And also, here we want to remind you that it is almost football season, and that means the best sports reporters in Chicago want to offer you, our listeners, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all the stories you love. Do not miss a game this season. Get all the big play scores and stories from the Chicago Sun-Times for a limited time only. You can test out our digital access for $1. Seriously, $1. There's no reason not to give this a shot, people. Stay up to date on breaking stories. Get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters. Cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city. And go deep inside City Hall with best-in-class political reporting. $1, I said. $1 for your first month. You cannot do better than that. Take advantage of this exclusive deal now at suntimes.com/Ben. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right, very good. Dave Roeder has joined us in the studio, and I twisted Jeff Johnson's arm, and all right, he'll stay anyway because he wants to hear this. Dave Roeder, of course, is ace business. I call him business reporter because back in the day, David, that's where, that's how you were. Anybody who wrote about development in the city of Chicago was on the business page. I don't know if they make that distinction anymore. But we've been talking about ways that Lori Lightfoot could find the money to operate the city of Chicago, pay the bills, etc. And a lot of this will come down to...
we're going to find out in about a week.
About a week. Yeah, do you have a prediction, by the way? We've been talking about that. Jeff and I have been talking at length about the various trial balloons that she's floated. What do you think she's going to come and settle on?
I got to think she's going to come back with some kind of a tax on high-end services, accounting firms, all architecture firms, law firms. We'll see how far that goes. That was an issue that they kicked around in the state, a couple of years ago. It never got enacted. We'll have to see if she can carry it through.
Well, one of the things that we were discussing is the possibility that let's say she asks for a tax on high-end legal services. Will law firms suddenly say, "We're leaving Chicago. We're going to go to Gary, Indiana"? Do you expect to hear that kind of rhetoric?
Oh yeah, up and down Northwest Indiana, right by the steel mills. They're going to put up all these buildings. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, the office market here is doing really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's because firms like that want to be here. They got lots of reasons for wanting to stay here. They'll moan about it, but I don't think they're going to get up and leave.
And they pass that on to the clients.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. So it'll just be a little more expensive to hire the architect to build your building and all of that. Okay. So we'll see if she can carry it through.
All right, let's talk about some of the big projects that are happening in downtown since the last time you were on the show. First, we talked the post office. You've been writing a lot about the old post office. I can't believe that baby is finally off the ground. You and I have been writing about that.
I know. That's the turnaround story of the city. It's really quite incredible. And I got to say, for people who've been around Chicago for a long time, if you've been in that building, it's really just amazing. You can stand on one floor and look at the other end and almost observe the curvature of the earth. The floor is so huge,
vast. Yeah.
When it was empty for 20 some years, they had to keep the heat on because they were worried that if the place got cold, the floors would contract and collapse.
Yeah.
Pancake on down. So it was just a blight. But with literally about $1 billion in money, the owners did all. They're doing all this refurbishment. And it's become, really an attraction. It's become a magnet for that southwest part of the loop. That and Willis Tower, which is getting, its own, big deal renovation, making it a lot more tenant friendly and all that. So it's driving a lot of other things going on out there. You got, Uber that said they're, going in with 450,000 square feet, although Uber's, just losing money hand over fist. So I don't know how long this is going to go on.
Since their IPO, everything that they're leaking out is that they're losing money just hand over fist.
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
do not know. But just for a moment, please explain to me the business model with Uber. We were talking about
you
this
have
yesterday.
6 employees that are IT employees. The rest are independent contractors. How are you losing money?
Yeah. And then but they have enough money to sink into a long-term lease with the post office.
And they're that they have these other ventures of Uber Freight, which is kind of applying the Uber independent contractor model to freight businesses, and they're doing some other things too. So it's still who knows if this is going to stay. But it's interesting, financial viability used to be a big rule for somebody renting office space. I got to make sure these guys are going to pay the bill. Well, I guess they think Uber's going to be good for a lease for 10, 15 years, whatever,
And of course, the post office and Willis Tower are in TIF districts. I think the post office TIF district is due to expire like within the next 2 or 3 years. Your sense of where Lori's going to go with this? Do you think she's going to continue that TIF district so there'll be more money for downtown development, Dave? Or do you think she's going to let these TIF districts expire and then be able to reap all the property taxes that are flowing into it?
Yeah, I think those TIFs will be rolling off the books. Yeah, I don't think there's any appetite to renew or extend them. She's going to need that money for herself, for the schools. So I think that's going to go by the boards.
All right. So what are the other big development deals you want to talk about that you've been writing about?
There's just so much going on in the area we're in. Fulton Market, the near west side. Everybody's putting up apartment buildings. You've got still more corporate, jobs coming in. Glassdoor has a big deal here where they're moving in kind of the west end of Fulton Market. There's a lot more development attention going on there. It's kind of crazy. You look everywhere you look in this neighborhood, you see the construction cranes.
I got 2 cranes outside my front door, and I live off of Madison. Yeah, they're doing 597's building right off of Madison and Bishop, and then there's another construction crane 2 blocks down.
Mm-hmm. But you just wonder how long this is going to go on. Yeah. And I keep hearing from some of the developers. They're starting to get nervous for a lot of reasons. One is maybe recession and so forth, but they're really worried about what kind of a tax bomb is going to be dropped on them too. They're going to be listening to what the mayor says next week. They're worried about the Cook County assessor and everything else going on. There's sort of a little bit of a chill wind going through the market right now.
So wait, that speaks to a point because from a pension side, from investing, I'm doing a conference end of September, and I'm doing commercial real estate. And one of the things that I always say is, with all the redevelopment that they've done downtown, all the new buildings, redevelopment, everything, if you're this business making money and you're in an older high rise, you look across the street and go, I want to be in that shiny new one.
Yeah.
And so, they're always going to the best, newest, better view and everything. And is it coming to that point where there's like a saturation point for like downtown area where it's like, okay, we can't build anymore. And once you get to the point where there's empty retail space, and that's why I'm like, are we at that point? Are we getting close to it?
Yeah, I don't see that happening right now because you always get some new users, new kinds of companies moving into the market. Like with the post office, it's got an appeal to tech firms because they like everybody on the same
open
floor.
Floors.
The big,
got a lot of open floor.
It used to be, they were building buildings for law firms that liked, tighter floors, corner offices for everybody. Some buildings looked like, sawtooth design because everybody had to have a corner office. But now that's kind of out of fashion. So tastes change. And there's still, an opportunity for developers here to build new and refurbish old buildings. You got so many of these older buildings that are getting some hotel presence in it. You've got these new age kind of hotel operators where say they'll own 12 rooms within an old office building. and they will rent those out as hotel rooms to people. You book it on your app, and it's, you're staying not in somebody's house, but in a hotel room that they've fixed up for you. But you're in an office building, or you might be in a condo building too. That's a whole new wave of uses coming into this market. That's kind of interesting. I think it maybe offers up some problems. We know about with Airbnb, the problems that this could bring on. This is supposed to be a little more stable, more quality to the rooms that they offer, that sort of thing.
You mentioned the possibility of a recession, and I've been following this from afar. It's more of a national news story than a local Chicago story, but already Donald Trump, his reelection team is very concerned about the possibility of a recession. I've seen some polls that just came out today that the attitude of voters is sort of changing. They're less optimistic about the economy, and there's this sense that this ride is about to end. How prevalent is that sense, that fear, that concern in the development community, the people that you cover?
Yeah, I think it's real out there. It's growing, but nobody knows, exactly, when it's going to happen, how deep it's going to be, or anything like that. The main thing about recessions is they're usually pretty short. We're on a decade-long, overall period of growth here, and recessions can feel kind of ruinous, but they're usually a short duration.
I'll tell you what, when you're going through one, it doesn't feel short. That's for sure.
All I picture, though, talking about when the property bubble burst, is the South Loop. And how the South Loop was in this major development phase, and then all of a sudden the bubble burst. Yes. And you had high rises with plastic just flopping out of it down, 12th Avenue, Roosevelt. And, everybody just walked away from them in the middle of the construction.
Yes, they did.
And, it's areas like that, which I think in Chicago, I think we'll weather a recession better than most other cities because of just how multifaceted we are with our economies and everything like that. But I don't see a neighborhood and I just picture the South Loop being like that epitome of how bad a recession can hit.
Oh my God, that was 2007, 2008. That's when it hit, and you're absolutely correct. It just walked away from construction projects.
Plastic flapping in the wind.
And then the reality, of course, is now the economy is stimulated. The real estate prices are soaring, and when you have a recession, suddenly people are stuck with property that's not worth it.
People are back to the same level of household debt that they had before the crisis. The same level of mortgage debt. Credit card balances have gotten up there again. It really is getting a bit nerve-wracking because all of this is the prices of real estate. It's going beyond people's ability to pay if they're trying to buy a house.
All right, that's Dave Roeder. Jeff Johnson stuck around as well. But I think we better head out the road, huh, D? You want to take a break and come back, or we
got some updates. Let's take a break. We'll do updates. We'll head out.
The boss of the show says let's take a break. We'll be right back after this.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Democratic socialism, to me, I believe that human beings, especially in a wealthy, democratic, civilized society like our own, are entitled to certain basic rights. So let me be very clear, and I'm sure we'll discuss it later in the show, Brett. I believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege. Okay?
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
Yes, indeed. Final minutes of today's show. Dave Roeder in the studio. Jeff Johnson also in the studio. Do you got an update for us before?
I have a few updates here before we roll out. First off, tomorrow, the Chicago Reader and the Ben Joravsky Show, we're writing a love letter to Chicago journalism. It's a telethon tomorrow, 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. We're going to be live on Facebook and ChicagoReader.com. It's a live telethon online to launch the Reader's new monthly donors campaign. We're going to have tons of guests here. We're going to be doing the Ben Joravsky Show from 1 until 3 at the Chicago Reader. A lot of guests lined up for the whole event, 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Support independent journalism and journalists by pledging as low as $5 a month at ChicagoReader.com/members. And be on the lookout on your Facebook and ChicagoReader.com. This telethon is going to be awesome. A lot of guests, a very learned telethon as well. We're going to be talking about Chicago history, Chicago Reader history past, and also trying to get some donations. Chicago Reader, free publication. So it's time to give a little money out to the Chicago Reader. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Join us, won't you? It'll be fantastic. All right, on to the updates here. We have a 2020 presidential candidate update. And if you want to get technical about it, a 2020 former presidential candidate update. A day after ending his 2020 presidential campaign, Jay Inslee has announced that he will seek a third term as governor of Washington State. Ben Joravsky, your thoughts?
Good.
Oh, that's it, huh? Good. Good.
I like the fact that Inslee is very committed to the fight against the destruction of the planet through climate change. I appreciate his commitment to that goal, but let's face it, folks, he never had a realistic chance to win the nomination. And I think the citizens of Washington are better served by having him returning as their governor if he can get reelected. And it's one less person standing on that stage. So many people complaining, Ben, there's too many people. I can't pay attention to all of them. So we're slowly reducing. Jeff Johnson knows this. This is going to happen, reducing the number of candidates running.
So Jay Inslee, he gone. All right, on to our next update.
Hawk
Chicago.
Yeah.
Little Chicago joke
Hawk
there.
Harrelson.
All right, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Donald Trump's longest serving and most loyal press secretary. Sarah Sanders is joining Fox News as a contributor. She's leaving the White House and joining Fox News.
I thought she already worked for Fox News.
Right?
Yeah,
She's going full.
I thought she already had that job. Yeah.
She's going full time.
I see. Okay.
She will make her debut appearance next month on the president's favorite show, all together now, Fox and Friends. That's right. She says she's excited to join Fox News as a contributor, yada, yada. She loves it, blah, blah. But what we're going to do here on the Ben Joravsky Show, we're going to congratulate, I guess, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, kind of send her off with a farewell here, one of our favorite things to play. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, so long. Give us that wicked equation you're always working.
And so the fifth reporter, like the first four, now paid nothing. He got a 100% saving.
100%.
The sixth now paid $2 instead of $3, a 33% saving. The seventh now paid $5 instead of $7, a 28% saving. 28%. The eighth now paid $9 instead of $12, a 25%.
I'm lost.
Yeah, okay, so David and Jeff, I think Jeff Johnson's heard this bit before. Back in the old radio show, we had the Sarah Huckabee Sanders during the tax debate, and it was when Donald Trump got through that massive tax cut. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was explaining to reporters who were very confused how a tax break for billionaires actually worked out to a tax break for ordinary middle-class people. And so she went on this long... That's just a piece of a long explanation when she took the deep dive into numbers and...
And so the fifth reporter, like the first four, now paid nothing.
Okay, got that? Yeah. She did it for the reporters. She was like, well, imagine you as a reporter, and this is what you're making. And anyway.
Farewell, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. We will miss you.
I know. Dave Roeder was a huge Sarah Huckabee Sanders fan. Anyway, so anyway, before we let you get out the door, David, I have to ask you about that. I don't know if you saw this. You did not write this. It was in the Chicago Tribune, but I subscribe to the Tribune as well. Okay, all right, here we go. Interesting article by Casey Johnson about, he's a sports reporter, about 25 years of the United Center. I forgot, the United Center is 25 years old and was bankrolled to a degree by a huge property tax break, so you're welcome, owners of the United Center. But it has obviously had a significant impact, don't you think, on these development trends that you were talking about? Talk a little about that.
It's had an enormous impact out there, and going back to the '90s with the Democratic convention there, and all the money Daley put in for the fixing up the streets and the flower planters in the middle of Madison Street and so forth. That helped kick off that area quite a lot, and it led to the building in of stuff between that and the loop. So
Oprah,
really quite an impact. Some of that stuff takes, sometimes it doesn't, but I think with the public investment that followed up with the United Center, it did it. It did the trick there.
Final question before I let you go. The 78. This is a development deal, massive development project for the South Loop, Roosevelt and Clark Street, and just south of there. There was one of the last we talked so much about Lincoln Yards, but don't really know what's coming at 78. Is there anything new on that front in terms of?
It's they have a general plan. This was to be like one of the Amazon headquarters site that the city threw into that derby, but their general plan is quite ambitious. Homes along the riverfront, some office buildings in the middle, maybe some towering. Connections to the train line, to the CTA and all of that. And they've got a space set aside for the U of I for like an innovation, a tech hub that is supposed to be going forward. We'll see if the state comes up with the money for that. Yeah, that was going to be a big piece there. They've they're working on the plans for that, and it's very slow in the process right now.
All right, very good. That's Dave Roeder from the Chicago Sun-Times. Dave, if folks want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
I'm at D Roeder, D as in David, ROEDER at suntimes.com, and always glad to take some tips. I'm especially interested right now in condo deconversions around the city. This is, developers trying to get a building deconverted from a condo to an apartment building. And I'm wondering if there's any shenanigans out there with the developers trying to take control of a condo board, letting the building run all downhill so they can pick up the rest of people's units on the cheap.
Interesting. Yeah, that's Chicago, man. They buy up the condos and then.
And you're seeing more apartment buildings though, or more apartments popping up in, especially in this area.
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah.
But that what you're talking about. What they do, Jeff Johnson, is they buy up the units. They don't. Maybe they sublet them. But more likely they just want to take control of the condo board.
Yeah.
Jeez.
What a city! If there's a scam in Chicago, they're going to figure it out. And Jeff Johnson, if folks want to get in touch with you, do you have any way they could do it other than just calling my show?
Twitter, Facebook, Jeff Johnson at meschicago.org.
All right, very good. That's Jeff Johnson and Dave Roeder. And I want to thank Miles. He did an outstanding job as always. He's working this new camera. The other Miles, Conflassen, was in here earlier from In These Times. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the board, and Alton, Illinois.
A-Town.
And
618.
As Jeff Johnson can tell you, back in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Yes, Dr. D, give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody, for the Reader Telethon.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/pages/Joravsky, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Downloaders, we live stream this program Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at Chicago Sun-Times website, Chicago Reader website, YouTube, and Facebook. We're now on Facebook Live. Get a load of Ben's old-looking hat. It's fantastic. And we'll see you tomorrow. And also the telethon. Check out the chicagoreader.com. Get all the information you need to know because we're going to be broadcasting there live tomorrow. It's going to be fantastic. We'll see you there.